Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming to our presentation about milking on the homestead. So having a dairy cow is great, but you got to know what to do with her, right? So we're going to get into that and talk about hand milking, machine milking, how to be safe and clean and provide milk to your family and maybe to your friends and neighbors. This is going to be presented by Kyla Shay of Be Where They Aren't Ranch in Florida. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So Kyla is on the board of the Purebred Mini Jersey Society. I've actually known her since right when she began. I gave her a phone call and got to know her, and we talked about what she does there in Florida. She is very involved with growing food for her family, not just for her and her husband, but also for her extended family of her children and her grandchildren. She has quite the organization going on there, getting everybody fed on her homestead and providing her food. And dairy is a huge part of what they eat to stay healthy.
Mhm.
PMJS is the Purebred Mini Jersey Society, and we are a registry as well as a community. And that's why we call ourselves society, because it's not just recording your cows and making sure that all of the documentation is in place. It's also networking and building relationships and learning from each other. And it's really important to us as breeders to be more than just caretakers of our cows, but to actually understand what's going on in the community, what the needs are of the market, as well as what's going on with our own family, what our own family's needs are. And there's a very broad way that we can all do what we need to do and still work together and provide genetics to each other and learn from each other. So we want us to be more of a community than just a service to register your cattle. All right, Kyla, you want to take it away?
I will. So we're going to go through setting up stuff, the actual milking, and what you do after milking, which all of it plays into it, but let's get started. All right, setup. How are you going to deal as a livestock keeper with your livestock, particularly if you're going to get them into milk? Some people use stanchions, some people just tie them to a fence. Some animals are better than mine and will just stand there. That's not mine. I use an actual stanchion just for um, being able to deal with it. Plus, we're milking 5 to 6 every day, so they come in a sequence and they're contained. So we're going to go through it. Different stanchions. There's a couple images that are up, images of some of us that just are lucky enough to sit right by their cow and get ready to hand milk, and then others that actually bring them into a stanchion. They can be as simple or as complex as you want them to be. Basically, the animals get used to going to a certain place at a certain time and with certain conditions. So everybody can deal with that. So there's different images with it. We're going to go right on to seating. Obviously, there's different ways to sit beside as you do it. If you're using a stool, should be easy to move around, um,
Comfortable.
comfortable,
Yeah.
very comfortable. Should be at the right height for the cow and the person. Mine's a little different. I actually use a mechanic's chair because I have some that are miniature and are 32 to 34 inches tall, and I have some that are mid-size, so it raises up and down. But that's
Nice.
everybody's choice. Some people can squat right beside them. I'm getting older every day, and that's not an option for me. I've seen
Wow.
some people, my grandfather's milked with a strap-on milking stool with a single leg.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
think I'm coordinated enough for that.
I just
But
flip over a bucket and sit next to the cow. Nothing gets me. Sarah, what do you use to sit on when you're milking?
I actually had built something that a friend showed me what her grandfather made that was kind of like a flat bench where you could put the bucket on and then slightly elevated at the back. And I made it out of scrap deck boards from when we built our house. So those were like 5.5 inch boards. But even that height was like too high by the time I stacked those together. So I nixed the bottom and I started sitting on 5.5 inches. So it's basically like a supported squat.
Okay.
And then that finally gave out on me. So now I'm just sitting on a cut off piece of a fence post. Like I really hardly put anything under me. It's just like that little bit of support.
That's fun. I love that there's so many different ways that you can do it, just whatever is comfortable and gets you at the right height.
Mm-hmm.
And
The
the
only thing I
solution,
would, oh, sorry. The other thing I was going to say is if you're using deck boards, just watch out for splinters because that was fun the first time that happened.
ouch, ouch. It's all about the height, though. You got to be at the right height. You can't
Right.
see what's going on. All right. Set up. Set up in your safety procedures. It starts from setting up whatever you're using to eventually getting to the point that you're going to clean up. Um, your equipment should be sanitized. Cold water rinse, hot water wash with an alkaline solution. All of the bits and pieces that you're using should soak for at least 5 minutes prior to any final rinses. Mine, I do the cold water rinse, I do the alkaline solution with it in hot water, leave it soak. The cleaner I use is a little bit foamy. Then we rinse it off with hot water and dip it in a chlorine solution, and then we rinse again. And then we dry and hang up things to dry. And everything should be put in an area that it can easily drain off and thoroughly dry before the next time you use it. Otherwise, you're encouraging chloroforms to form. The environment that you're working in should be clean and dry, whether it's bedding that's down, a dirt floor. Um, I have a concrete floor. I clean it and pressure clean it every day. An ATS solution, flooring solution would work also. Um, are you indoors? Are you outdoors? And your hands should be clean. Um, I go through a lot of nitrile gloves because of the teat tip. I'm allergic to iodine and I need the iodine teat tip. So those gloves get switched a lot between every single cow. As far as when you're ready, I use a soft bristle brush, brush off the flanks and the udder, get all of that as clean as I possibly can. A warm water with a gentle soap that's used. There's a lot of different dips. Mine vary between the year, even though it's Florida. We're not as humid in the winter, and I have to worry about drying and cracking. So I do use one that has a conditioner that's in it before, and we use it again after.
Kyla, can you
Um,
take a second and explain why the cold water rinse comes before the hot water wash?
yes, I can. I'll go back to that. So the cold water rinse, you do that because it doesn't set the milk solids on whatever equipment you're using. If you immediately rinse with hot water, it almost binds them to whether it's a stainless or some type of a rubber, um, like the milk liners for the Surge, the DeVals, any of those. But so it's recommended. And our vet, as we set everything up and started working on it, recommended that we definitely needed to cold water rinse as soon as possible in us dealing with the equipment. Not doing that, the hot water will actually seal it and sort of almost bind it to any material. And then you get a high SCC count, your chloroforms go up, and it also, the hot water encourages a bacteria growth
And how often do you do your acid wash on your equipment?
every day.
Do you do it every day?
Every single day,
Wow, I only
every
do it
single
about once
piece,
a week. I do take my equipment apart every single time, but I don't do the acid wash every single time.
every single time we do it. Cold water, hot water, soapy water, acid wash afterwards, followed with a hydrogen peroxide that then we then rinse again. But um, I have documented somatic counts of 0 to 4.
Nice. Yeah. Now I don't use a teat dip either. Um, what I found is keeping them on their feet after they milk by feeding them gives the sphincters time to close up. So I've never really found a teat dip to be necessary for what I'm doing. The other reason, my thought process with that is when the calf is nursing, the teats aren't dipped in between. So I've I've let that slide for a full 12 years and never had a problem, but it is of course unique to different situations. I don't sell milk. I'm milking for my family and we haven't had an issue. If I was selling, I'm sure it would be as meticulous. I'm careful about being clean, but I just haven't found the teat dips to be necessary. And same thing, I don't want the iodine is why. So
And we're very careful even with the iodine because of my allergy.
yeah.
And we do, obviously, our family uses it, all the cheeses from here, any of the heavy creams, regular cream, all of that is from here. And I can't have the iodine. So that's why even when we use the iodine, before we spray it back off and make sure we're gently wiping it. And if anything shows up on the milking towels, rinse again
Yeah.
and again. A lot of it is I'm so specific with it. I come from a medical background and spent years in sterile procedures. So I probably really do go overboard, but it's what works for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no
Everybody's
doubt.
different. I had
And we do
somebody watch
so
me
well.
milk once and she thought that I was being extra careful because she was there and because she milks. So it was interesting to have her watch and be like, wow, do you do this every time? Are you that meticulous? Yeah, I am. I'm not doing it because I had an audience. That's just how I do it. So I love that there's a little bit of variation as long as we're still super careful about the cleanliness. And you'll know if you're not, it shows up right away in how long your milk will store. Thanks.
It
That's
certainly
great
does.
information.
Which my milk, the way that I do it, and we've checked it, would I drink it that far out? But we've had testing done on it 20 days out and are fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last that long. I do sell milk in the raw form and everything else. When I make cheese, I can burn through 20 gallons quick.
Yeah.
All right, onwards. All right, milking. The fun part. Two types, hand milking or machine milking. It is 100% your preference. Um, there's advantages and disadvantages of both. Your hand milking, it's quiet, it's very personal with your cows. There's a whole lot less cleanup because basically you're dealing with a bucket. Your hand muscles, if they're not strong to start out with, they're going to get really strong. The flip side of that is if you're a little bit older and have used your hands for a million things over the years, sometimes your thumbs don't like it. And we'll let you know that for the rest of the day. It's really inexpensive. You can use any stainless steel bucket that you choose. There's a lot of houseware items you can repurpose to get started with it. When I started milking, I did milk by hand. One cow was fine for me. Two cows that was it. If I had to milk three, it was not going to happen.
I've
I
done as
just,
many as three, but it was sure nice when the kids would pitch in or my husband would pitch in.
yeah. And I found even it was stressful on my hands, but it was hard on my arms too. Just partly of it. Machine milking, it's a whole lot faster. It's really easy for those that have tiny teats.
Yeah.
It's a closed system for cleanliness. It's what I choose because Florida, South Florida, it hasn't frozen here since 2008. Our bugs don't die. They're everywhere. There isn't a week that goes by that I'm not dealing with keeping the flies off the horses. As soon as you start to milk, the flies are everywhere.
Yeah.
And milking into a bucket, even if you put cheesecloth, nice linen across the top of it, the flies are still all over it. It is an investment for any of them you're going to do. I see systems out there, low end ones for around $400, $500, and some of them can go up to easily 3 to 4,000, depending on what you want, how you're going to do it, and needs change as you do it. I've been milking for 18 years. Um, it's a lot different today than it was 18 years ago for
Yeah,
what
we have so many choices.
choices and my physical capabilities.
That's
Right
true. That's
now,
a
I
good
need
point.
easy.
That's a good point.
I need easy. Um, if you're doing multiple cows, definitely a machine milker is easier, unless you have multiple other sets of hands to help you.
When I started milking or when I'm training heifers, I use an old Folgers plastic coffee can because if the cow kicks it, it doesn't hurt anything. That milks it. It's milking into plastic, so it's not milk I'm bringing into the house. But for training, it's really nice to be able to just work with that plastic and she can just boot it and we figure it out from there when you're hand milking. But when I first started, I hand milked for 7 years and I was using individual quart size regular milk mouth size jars and I would hold it with my left hand and milk with my right hand until the jar was full, cap it, and then open the next jar and milk into it. And it would take 8 to 12 jars sometimes, depending on the cow. So that it was tedious, but my milk was clean. And if anything got in there, I could just dispose of one jar and the other ones were still good. And it was super inexpensive to get started, but you don't want to use glass around a cow that's not trained. So that's where that Folgers bucket came in for the first while. But
Wow.
you can really use anything that's stainless that will hold the milk so you can transport it into the house as quickly as possible.
I did the same thing with mason jars and I thought I was crazy. I didn't know anyone else ever did that.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think we all did it at some point. Um, I know I did probably for that first couple of years that I hand milked. My left arm holding the jar would get really, really tired
Yeah, my hands would
as
cramp.
it got fuller and fuller. It was like, oh my gosh, my arm.
You build up some muscles though.
You do. No gyms required for us.
Yeah, yeah. But you're right. Once you get multiple cows and milk, it's easier to have the milk machine to be able to help with that. And it's kind of a time trade-off. It's way faster to milk, takes a little more time for cleanup, but it's a closed system. And to be able to go from one cow to the next and have big volumes of milk, it is a lot easier. That's a lot of quart jars if you're doing it by hand.
I can't. Right now, every day, I'm at uh, 15 to 19 gallons a day. I cannot imagine my still carrying the quart or 2 quart jars down to
There's
the
no
milking
way.
barn every
There's
day.
no way.
And I couldn't do it. I couldn't lift that much all at once. Where am I going to put it?
Right. I
All
do
right.
really, and I miss the time that I had with the cows one-on-one when I was hand milking. I felt like I knew them individually a little bit better because I was so in tune with every shift that they made and every little movement because I had to keep that jar so close.
That that part is, but with the machine milker, I find that I I know how many minutes it takes me to roughly milk each one. So I do get up from the chair and talk to them and touch them and do a full body condition check on them every day. So they know me just in a different way.
Right.
I'm not underneath them, I'm beside them. All right, let's talk about milking machines. All right, there are a lot of different choices. So the original milking machine was made late 1890s, early 1900s. It was called a surge belly milker, and it was made by a company called Babson. And I still have my grandfather's surge milkers. That was gifted to me by a cousin, an inheritance. So I have many, many more than I will ever need. But, you know, it's still nice to have. Pros of them: they're super easy to clean. They're super easy to pour out of, and they are the old workhorse. They're a solid, seamless stainless steel and thick stainless steel. If the cow kicks it, it's not getting dented. I'm sure some of the ones I have are from the 1920s and 30s. And they still basically look like the day he bought them. Um, you can use it on the side. I use the Surge, but they're modified to be more like the Melistay or the Duval parts. So I don't use the belly band on them. The original part of it was it actually hung from a strap underneath the cow. The teat cup liners were attached with directly to the milker. The inflations for your vacuum were probably 10 to 12 inches most. Um, I did the modified. I'm not going to put the belly band on the cow. In the event that one of them decided she was totally flipped out by it and decided to run away. And I didn't want to hang underneath the cow to hook it up. And as it fills, it gets really heavy. And I didn't want that weight on my girls. So I still use them, just modified. Um, Cons of it, there is maintenance required. You do have to work on the regulators. The original regulators are, the gaskets in them are actually still to this day made out of leather. And you do need to clean them. If they get wet at all, there's a problem with it. I know how to tear them apart and rebuild them. It's not an issue, but there is a fair amount of maintenance, and a lot of people can't deal with them. There are replacement ones you can get for them. I don't like the vacuum pressure that's done with those. With the original ones, it's very easy to control that the vacuum on and off isn't going too fast or too slow to damage the teats and the udder. Melistays are a standalone bucket system. They have two versions of it. One of it comes on a cart. It can be 2.5 to 8 gallons. People that I know have it, absolutely love it. I have a set milking barn. I do have a Melistay vacuum pump, but I have an overhead vacuum line with tubes that drop down from the roof, and I hook it into the Surge milker, the same place you'd hook the Melistays in. And I don't haul the pump around with me every day. It's freestand, it's installed into the building. We did that upgrade about a year ago, and I really like not having two individual pumps. The cons of the Melistay, I have seen them at different fairs. The milk bucket's really big. It's tall. It's about 2.5, almost 3 feet tall. So to pick it up and pour the milk out of it, that's a little bit. I'm not going to pick up 5 gallons of milk and try to pour it into jars or pour it into a smaller bucket. Um, that was just a con for me. Um,
One of the
Duval,
things I found when I was looking into that was that the 14 amp service, that it pulls a lot of power, and some people were saying that they were having trouble with it flipping their breakers. So if you don't have great power where you're milking, that could be a problem.
that's true. That's true. My husband he originally went through school as an electrical engineer before he went back to be a physician. So everything in our house is overpowered.
You are very lucky. Very lucky.
So that I didn't have to worry about when I wanted to switch over to it. And that I really liked. There was a lot of maintenance on the individual pumps, and they didn't last that long. The average lifespan of the individual pumps, even though I spent $250 to $500 for them, they lasted about a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
So it was getting to be a cost issue of let me upgrade the pump. Um, Utterly Easy does it all. I'm not overly familiar with it. I've seen photos
I
of
was
it.
going to say, I can talk about that one because I actually use that system. When I moved from hand milking, I bought a used Utterly Easy system, the bottle style. So it went from the glass jars to plastic, food grade plastic some people don't want to use plastic. They do have a glass option. But those actually hang each individual bottle off of each quarter. So they're hanging by the teat by the vacuum. Uh, I didn't notice that it was any big deal. I didn't have any problems with the teat ends. I didn't have any stretching or anything that I noticed. I used that for maybe 2 years, and then they came out with the Utterly Easy. So I switched from that bottle system to the Utterly Easy, which is a bucket system. They have a 2.6 gallon and a 5 gallon. I have both, but I prefer the 2.6. If I'm milking one cow twice a day, that's enough for me. If I'm milking multiple cows, the reason we upgraded to that bucket system is I had 3 cows in milk at the same time. And that's when I have to use that 5 gallon bucket because I'll get at least that much. Sometimes I had to use both buckets and fill the 5 and then move on to the 2.5. It is inexpensive. It wasn't terribly expensive to get into. It's easy to be able to switch and upgrade to other systems. You use the same vacuum, but it is a constant vacuum system. So a lot of people don't like that. They worry that there's going to be damage done to the teats, to the teat canals and the sphincters, because it's not a pulsing system. It's a constant vacuum. There's a little gauge on there so you can monitor it. It is nice for someone though that wants to be able to switch back and forth between milking goats and milking cows. You can do that with this system. You can milk camels and horses and pretty much anything that makes milk. So for someone that needs a lot of flexibility, I could see where that would work for them. Again, I like it. I haven't had a lot of problems with it. It's easy to get parts. Customer service is excellent. I've got a surge. I don't use the surge because I don't really have anywhere to be able to wash a bucket that big, that wide. When I was using it, I had to wash in the bathtub. So that's why I went to the bottle system, even though I did inherit a surge, because the bottles were easy to wash by hand, as well as the smaller buckets that Utterly Easy offers.
I'm spoiled there too. We had converted a building on our property that originally was a greenhouse. So that's where I do all the milk processing. But I have a large commercial 3 container sink,
Oh yeah.
which is why I can go from the cold to the soapy to the rinse very quickly. And each section of it is right at 32 inches by 32 inches. So it's not a big deal for me to put the surges in it. Having had the Duval style, that one didn't work because the container was so tall. I was having to put it in. It didn't quite fit in there. And then I'd have to lift it all the way out to pour any liquid out. And there were a lot of impromptu bathings of me.
Okay, good to know.
As
I know
I
some of them
spilled
have
it all
different,
over me.
the buckets come in different sizes, like the Melody that you were saying, it has a 6 gallon size, which is still really big. I don't know if there's one between the 2.6 and the 6. Is there
The
a 3?
Melstay has a 2.6, a 6, and an 8 gallon.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So for someone who's milking multiple cows, that might make sense, but you're gonna have to adjust your system. I think we all would love to have a system like you've got set up, Kyla, but I don't. I've got a barn and I've got, if I haul it up to the house, that's where I do my washing. So
And I understand. I understand I am extremely spoiled.
Sarah, how about you? Which machine do you use?
We still are only hand milking.
Awesome.
Most I've ever hand milked was 3 cows at once, which was okay because the calvings were spaced out.
Nice.
I had 2 freshen within a few days of each other. That was hard.
Right.
Like 5 gallons per cow, twice a day with each one. My hands hurt for a little while there. But yeah, so we do calf sharing so that we're not getting as much milk, and we generally don't wean the calves until 6 months or later. So it's not overwhelming for us. So that works out for us. I did have a question for you all, or kind of like a thought, I guess, or maybe you have thought about this too. For people who are using machines, I'm trying to wrap my mind around how it all works and thinking about this pump that's powering it. Do you have a redundancy plan? Especially if you're milking 6, 7 cows and that pump goes out, what do you do?
Back to the hands. That's what we've had to do. So far, my vacuum pump has been going strong for a long time. I bought it used. That was 2019 and it's 2025 now, and I still am using the same vacuum pump. The filter still looks perfectly clean. I do keep the vacuum pump and the hose that connects to the bucket inside a tote in a little wagon, like a garden wagon in my barn. So it's sealed and it doesn't get a lot of dirt. It's not pulling in a lot of dirt when it's running. It's just got the line that comes out that way and I can protect it. But I haven't had any trouble with it. So the only time it goes down is when the power's out. So I could go to my hands if I need to, but we've got a backup generator that kicks in eventually and it'll power back up.
As far as me, when I had the two separate vacuum pumps before I went up to the Melistay, um, I always had a third spare just in case, particularly when you're milking the 5, 6 that I'm milking every day. Doing them one at a time, just it's not part of my daily schedule. I can't spread it out. As it is now, I can go through all of them, set up to clean up. It takes me to do 5 of them, about an hour and 30 minutes from start to finish, from setup to cleanup's done. I can walk away and then go on to the goats, the horses, anything else that needs attention at that point. Um, so I definitely have a spare always. When we switch to the Malastay, I still have 2 full setups of the small standalone ones that are there just in case. And like you, Lorenda, I have them in, it's really a toolbox, but they're the hard plastic and they're out within the milking area, and it's cleaned up in a gigantic 8 millimeter Ziploc bag, and they're set on the bottom of the toolboxes. So it's literally 2 steps. If something suddenly decides it's not going to work, I don't have to run back to the house
Right.
and start scrambling around or go even further and out to the equipment barn to get it. It's still there.
That's a good point because I do have spare parts for things. I don't have a whole separate vacuum pump that's in addition, but I do have spare parts and I do have them sealed up, like you said, in Ziploc bags, ready to go. Extra teacups, extra cups themselves, extra hoses, seals, and extra everything pretty much, but that expensive part, the vacuum pump.
So I have that, and that in that same bucket is everything that I would need if there was a problem with the cow. There's stuff for wounds, there's different fly sprays, there's anything that I'm going to notice about that cow when I'm up close and personal to her that I can immediately drop back and absolutely treat.
Yep, absolutely. I've got some treatment in that same plastic tote with my vacuum, extra gloves, rubber garden gloves in case something's real messy. Shoulder gloves if I ever was to need to go in, scissors, a tape measure because we're working with minis. I pull it out sometimes when they're milking and check where's she at now. Yeah, so it's nice to have that storage space.
Yeah. Just to have everything close by and not have to cows tied up or stanchioned and you now need to go
Run
back
it
to
to
the
the
house
house or to the garage or yeah,
somewhere else, because I don't like leaving the girls alone, particularly when they're in the stanchions. That's a
absolutely.
must stay here with you. I have no idea what you're going to do if you decide suddenly mom's not here. All right, so let's go to after milking. Okay. Um, if you're bucket milking, hand milking, um, cover the pail with a clean dish towel, fine cheesecloth, flour sacks, pantyhose will work. That way it keeps your flies and your debris from actually flying into it. I do use a soft brush to brush off the flanks, all of that we talked about before. Um, as we're done with everything, I use a fine mesh strainer. Um, in a funnel that I'm actually pouring the milk through. there's a lot of places out there that have really nice ones now that are super, super fine that nothing is going to get through. There's also milk filters that you can purchase. Coffee filters will work. Um, the milk should all be strained through them for any debris. And I even do the same, even though I have a closed system, because there may be a dry spot on the udder, there's skin cells that have come off. They could shed hair after you've brushed them. So I don't pour directly into the glass jars that I store mine in.
Right, you should always filter, and that way you can check that filter to see if there's any clumps, if there's any hair. It kind of gives you feedback on how clean you're being about the process before you start milking. And the health of the udder, the quarter.
Some milking machines have built-in filters. I've never used one. I don't have a lot of data on it, and I think even if I did have one, I'd still have to pour through my filter. I just can't help the OCD tendencies. Um, After milking, containers. Um, Most people usually store them in gallon or half-gallon glass jars, plastic or metal lids. A clean pail or bucket will work, I guess. And dates should always be recorded that you know what dates they were done for. Uh, your containers should be fully sanitized. Again, as they're emptied, cold water rinse, hot water soapy rinse. Um, Florida requirements mean that we have to put them through um, rather a home dishwasher or a commercial dishwasher that the water can reach a minimum of 125 degrees Fahrenheit before they can be used. And you know, if you're using glass jars, you can easily see if there's any residue. On plastic, I don't use plastic.
No, but the lids sometimes are plastic, I found.
I do have the hard plastic lids, and after we soak those, run them through the dishwasher, we still soak them in a light hydrogen peroxide rinse just to make sure we've destroyed anything. And I can tell with those, just touching them, if there's any residue, I'm back to the on dish soap.
I think everybody that I know stores in glass because it doesn't distort the flavor of the milk. So you don't want to use plastic for storing, like your plastic pitcher that you make iced tea or something in, because you're going to get some off flavoring to the milk. And glass allows you to see when your cream is separated so you can start straining it off. And like you said, I always check the jar visually before I pour into it once I filtered.
Mhm. I've had some people ask me because there are jars you can buy that look like the old-fashioned glass milk jars that have a very narrow top on them, that there's a disposable lid. And they've asked me, how do you clean those? So, how you clean them is quite interesting because obviously a bottle brush isn't going to do very well going down through a narrow opening into a container that's about 2.5 inches wide, 4 inches deep. So I have had those in the past. How I clean them is I do my whole process. I'll get to the cold water part and I use a funnel and I add about a half a cup of white rice uncooked that I've rinsed 3 times, and I put it in through the funnel, put the top back on, and if you shake it, the rice takes all of the milk proteins and solids off of the glass. And then you can go ahead and continue to sanitize.
Okay.
Interesting part, but I'm staying with my mason jars. It works well for me.
Yep.
I recently got something, I believe they're called bottle beads. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're little tiny stainless steel balls. And so anything with a narrow top and a bigger bottom, you can use those the same way you would use the rice.
Nice. Then they're reusable.
Yeah.
You can sanitize them.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. With the heat of summer, with the surge milkers, and obviously us getting down to temperature, which we're going to talk about next, I do use the stainless steel whiskey balls,
Oh, yeah.
and I'll put those in the freezer every night. And I put them inside the surge milkers. And if I'm going to pour off anything into a stainless container, I put those in it. And actually, while I'm still milking, it can be 90 degrees outside. And within about 15 minutes, they'll have the milk down to about 34 degrees. I put 2 or 3 in each of the surge milking bellies, sanitize them the same way, and that way I don't have to worry about the length of time it's taking me to milk between the first and the last cow.
That's a good point when it's really hot like that. Being up in North Idaho, I don't normally have to worry too much about it. I can even dawdle just a little bit in the winter and make sure that the barn's all tidied up before I run into the house with the milk. But once it's warm like that, you're dealing with that constantly. So that's an excellent tip. Thank you.
Yeah, currently it's 85 degrees here. So we've had about 10 days we haven't had to worry about it. But the rest of the time, stainless steel whiskey balls to the rescue. All right, after milking, chilling and storing. As much as it's important to get your cow extremely clean before you milk her, it's also very important to pay attention to what you're doing after the milking has been done. So according to the FDA, bacteria levels double every 20 minutes at room temperature. Room temperature is defined as 68 to 72 degrees. If raw milk stays at 40 degrees or above, E. coli, salmonella can thrive within it, and it's not something we can visually see. Raw milk left out at 70 degrees for more than 2 hours is a significant health risk. I'd dump it down the sink. You are supposed to, within the first hour, get that milk below 40 degrees. There's different ways you can do it. You need to chill it. You need to chill it fast. Some people just use an ice water bath. Taking the warm milk directly, putting it into your mason jar and putting it in the fridge will not chill it to that below 40 degrees within an hour. So you need some other method to get it colder faster. And in my case, because it's South Florida and I'm very specific about how fast can I get it to that. The whiskey balls and the milkers help. After I'm done pouring it off, each jug goes into a cooler that has ice and water that's floating in it. And the average time I can get it to below that 40 degrees is about 30 minutes from the time I get back to the barn at the very most. So I'm very, very specific with it. The faster you can get it below 40 degrees, you're going to really minimize any potential bacteria growth. And it also extends your freshness time. So it's extremely important to do that and get it all done.
I know that some people will leave their milk out and let it clabber and do things with it, but as far as milking for drinking, these are the best practices. This is what we should be following to provide milk for ourselves and for our families, and our friends and things. That bottom shelf in the back, with the way that the modern refrigerator works, is going to be the coldest spot in your fridge. But we're constantly opening, the kids are getting out, cheese sticks and carrots, and you're constantly changing that temperature in your milk, your refrigerator, and your milk is going to get warmer sometimes than it should be for long-term storage, a week or two. So if you are making a lot of milk, you may want to consider having that second dedicated milk fridge that's only open when you're getting milk. It's not being opened for lunchtime and snacks and dinner preparation and things like that.
The other option is you can get milk plan chilling vats and tanks. I have looked into them. I haven't chosen to go to that option because so far I'm able to manage it with the equipment that I have. I do have a dedicated milk fridge that's out within that processing area. So basically the only times it's getting opened are when we're putting milk in, when we're taking milk out, and outside of that, probably 15 minutes a day. The rest of the time it's closed.
Right.
And at an adequate temperature.
I think on a homestead situation like we're talking about, that most people aren't going to have a tank or a
They're
vat
not going to have
to
that.
quickly chill. It's just not, it doesn't make sense for the amount of milk volume that we're working with.
Now, and even looking into the milk chilling vats, the smallest I've been able to find is 15 gallons. And I think I'm dealing with it adequately. Where am I going to put it?
Right.
15 gallons isn't a small container. Um, and then it's another huge step to clean. For me, it's another source of infection risk. And I definitely wouldn't want to mix. I know you can leave the milk in them and it won't freeze it, but I don't want to add today's milk that isn't at a chilled temperature to yesterday's chilled milk.
That makes sense. And it's just cost prohibitive. They're not cheap.
They are not cheap. I mean, I've looked into it. Just I don't, for my particular application, I don't see a point. Maybe if you're milking more than 6 to 8, if you're providing a large amount of raw milk to clients, if you have a self-service farm store, that would really help you during the day for your own parts. In my application, it's not necessary at this point and it is extremely cost prohibitive.
And I don't think most people do that. I think a lot of people will take their milk once they've strained it, put it into their container, and put it into a freezer temporarily. You want to make sure you have some sort of a system like wearing a rubber band on your wrist or something to remind you to go get that milk back out of the freezer so that it chills quickly and it doesn't freeze and break your jars. There we are.
There we all are.
This has been great, Kyla. Thank you. That's a lot of information. I love that we have the three of us, such different approaches, but the result is the same: fresh, clean milk for our family and our friends. Thank you, everyone who took the time to watch the video all the way to the end. We would love it for you to come and visit us at purebredminijerseys.org, learn more about us. We're on Instagram, we're on Pinterest, YouTube, of course. We've got all these webinars, kind of a crash course to get to know everything you can about mini jerseys in general. So thank you for coming today, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.